Hello everyone, I have been away for some time from making Battletech related videos. I have a new set, looking to remake my old videos and get into more detail. However, unlike other videos teaching the game itself, this is one of a deeper nature. Thank you for listening. This is an event that took place in 2022. We have a fantastic group that has been thriving for the better part of a decade. There have been a variety of players from all walks of life over the years. This recounting of this series of events could have multiple outcomes. The desired outcome is learning that maybe if someone is dealing with a bully in their gaming group, they can know that they have the power to stand up and correct them, and if they become hostile, expel them entirely. We saw a surge of excitement in 2022 for our group, days with as many as 10 to 12 players. I have organized the vast majority of games for nearly the last decade at the location we play. Typically, Facebook is where the games are organized using some of the Facebook post tools. Using these various options, I posted polls to see what players wanted to play and posting helpful information on difficult rules areas. It was a roaring start as we got back to playing. I was trying to provide scenarios that allowed everyone to familiarize with the rules and build efficiency, while including elements such as eras that players wanted to play. So one day, mid-game, with around 8 people, after a couple great conversations with interested onlookers already, I feel a presence next to me, outside of my peripheral. As I look up from my record sheets, I see a skirt. Then as I get to the face, I realize I am looking at a transgender person. I turn my head, standing upright, looking directly at this person, and say, "Hey, Battletech," nodding towards the table. This person doesn't respond, make eye contact, or even acknowledge me. Not to be rude to the players, I return to the game. Moments later, I turn to find the person gone. Now a slight break to the story. I try to maintain a neutral stance towards most people I don't know. I let their characters show how they should be treated. I will be using biologically accurate terminology in this explanation of events. He was very quickly showed his character. To quote Elon Musk, wokeness gives people a shield to be mean and cruel, armored in false virtue. This man used his online voice via live video to verbally berate me and slander me with false statements of events and fabricate complete lies of interactions he had with players in our group. This man weaponized his gender identity and pronoun preferences against me, stating complete falsehoods of conversations and interactions we never had, in effect leveraging a false claim of misgendering. This man slandered me, committed cyberbullying, and committed libel. This man attempted a character assassination against me. He turned an unknown number of online players, and through a proxy convinced at least one local player, a friend, to act against me. These individuals acted on this liar's claims against me without evidence, and even after evidence was coming out to show his claims were absolutely false. To this date, in January of 2023, none of these individuals have apologized for this astounding series of events and their actions during them. To be clear, this is in stark contrast to any women I have interacted with in the gaming atmosphere. On days we play, I occasionally get to talk to the wife of one of the store owners. She's a very kind woman that is incredibly welcoming. Another longtime player's wife gave the game a go, and we had a great time as I showed her the ropes. One player brought his minor daughter to a game in which she killed everyone, and it was a great time. Any other females showing interest, I always make myself available to teach the game to, and we have a great experience. Typically, she totally destroys my battle mech. No woman in the gaming space has ever been as cruel and hate-filled as this man was in the vindictive and absolutely toxic attitude he presented during and after his expulsion from the community. First from our group, then from others. To make sure there is no mistake about the person I was interacting with, I will be using biologically accurate terminology when referencing the toxic player in some areas. Keep in mind, he never had a face-to-face or private message conversation concerning pronouns with me. I never openly misgendered him in person or online in any of our interactions. He is a 6 foot tall, 350 to 450 pound adult male, not a petite 5'3", 140 pound female. Returning to standard happenings with games, I use Facebook post tools such as polls to find out what players want to do and who can play. I use this to form a set of force design guidelines to get as much in for as many players as I can. This player joins our Facebook group, then one Saturday says he will attend. Because of his rude demeanor at the game when he ignored me, I was observing his interactions with the group, which were short and snappy as it was. The morning of the game, it was clearly posted that the store opened at a certain time, and we would start at a certain time. The tables were set, and all the players were present except him. The players present began playing, and I apologized to the one player that was hanging out waiting. This part is important soon. This player waiting was also new to the group. He is incredibly kind, patient, and passionate about Battletech. He and I got along right off the bat, including his wife and 2 friends. I enjoyed being around all of them. He said no worries and observed the games being played, interacting with the players. I go on Facebook and comment, tagging the missing player, asking if they were still coming. His response was something along the lines of, "I selected the option that said I was." I let him know a player was waiting. Then 45 minutes after start time, he shows up, and then takes additional, excessive time to set up when all he needed to do was bring out record sheets and minis. The event goes forward, the games end, and we all hang out for a bit afterwards. It was either this time or the next that he was walking out, and I said see ya, and got no response. One of the next times we played, and he did show up on time, I said hey in the parking lot, and he ignored me again. Finally, the event. The player I mentioned previously and spoke highly of, that waited for the toxic player, wanted to run a game. He wanted to run a campaign. He was the GM, and I was playing an assisting role. Initially in the setup, I was playing in the majority player force, and he was op 4 with 2 players. I noticed quickly that players were asking me questions like I was the GM. So I spoke with him and we switched. I would play op 4, and he would be with the player force to better manage the situation. The player force had about 8-ish players with him, including the toxic player. The op 4 was 3 players, including myself. Prior to the event start, the players were all supposed to bring their needed record sheets. The toxic player is the only one who did not. It was me that found out no one had an extra of the needed record sheet, so I went and built one by modifying a similar record sheet. Then the game started. The toxic player took on a lead type role right off the bat with that side, since he had one of the biggest mechs. The player force had an objective to take ground, where the op 4 needed to grab an objective and egress. The game progressed very slowly, as the player force, receiving a lot of cues from the toxic player, progressed slowly. Finally, when pressure was applied on the op 4, I took on a narrative role, and gave an order on the open channel, audibly to the player force, trying to push for communication and narrative play. Making eye contact with the toxic player as I made this statement. One of the other players suggested to the group that they should challenge the statement, but the group didn't seem to rally behind the idea. A combination of information miscommunication took place after as something was destroyed that the op 4 thought would just cause a mess, and some of the player force thought this as well, but actually caused a massive catastrophe, including player deaths. I verbally expressed I thought the object was something else. The toxic player nearly immediately started clearing terrain and making things happen before a real-world dialogue could take place, or the GM could GM an adjustment, given this is the first game of an intended campaign. Given the events in the weeks ahead, including some immediate player disapproval, this makes sense that the toxic player would be in a rush to make a situation that could have been adjusted stick for the toxic player's intended goals. In retaliation to this event, the toxic player then begins shooting non-combatants on the op 4 side, which is clan. The game ends with a number of players disappointed, but some still working toward trying to bring success to the GM's campaign. The GM felt terrible about what had happened and wanted to rectify it in the follow-up game, and I expressed I did not know what would happen when the building was shot at. I even went as far as making a fan fiction piece to give the player force a feel that was actually an epic series of events for their side. Needless to say, the road to hell is paved with good intentions. The evening following the event, the GM had other things going on and was not online. This being the situation, the toxic player began stirring the pot on both Discord and Facebook. At first, it looked like he was trying to smooth things out, but he switched gears to trying to point blame, vaguely at first. Me, having been building and running the group since the beginning, I was horrified to see the frustrations and anger being levied among players. Some were going after the GM. I was trying to smooth things over myself and explain, even giving some details the GM had allowed me to know to support him. But with the toxic player, it was continuing to escalate. I soon began responding directly to the statements made by the toxic player, who then took aim at me, trying to place all the blame on me. The player was making false claims and statements about what I knew about the game and accusations of my intent, completely contrary to the character I've shown players for the years playing together. Finally, it came to a head in a series of statements and accusations where I told the toxic player to not come back to a game I am running. I made it clear I had no authority to ban this toxic player from the store, but that I would not run a game and allow this player to participate. On our Facebook page, as one of the 2 active admins, I reduced the player's posting capacity to limited for 30 days to allow things to cool off there. I pulled back and went to bed. The next morning, doing my usual scrolling thing on Facebook, I began to notice I was not seeing nearly as many Battletech posts as usual. I then went to look for a couple different pages, all not appearing in my search. I was able to talk to a couple different players and found out some mods' names. One I had talked to in the past and sent a message. In the meantime, I find out the toxic player was posting about me in one of the pages from an individual who sent screenshots. To this day, I have no idea the extent of the post, any attached screenshots, comments, reactions, etc. The mod starts trying to grill me about what happened at the game, and through the questions, I was able to figure out what was really going on. The character assassination of me through the transgender pronoun misgendering route on top of the game mishap. I thank the mod for the needed info and end the conversation, which the mod clearly did not expect. I promptly banned the toxic player from our page, as we now have a player that committed libel and cyberbullying against a member of our group. Things start to cool somewhat through the week, but as we got to the second half of the week, things started to ramp up again. I participate in a volunteer group. The toxic player had apparently gone to the group's head person and reported me with the various slews of false claims in an attempt to have me expelled from the group. The head person wanted to speak with me, and we set a time. Before that time arrives, I get wind of a video channel the toxic player has, and that the event was discussed. The player referenced me as a dick, he was sensible enough not to name drop, then unloaded a number of false claims against me, some of which were built on false statements he falsely claimed other players made about me. He also claimed that I had banned multiple players from the group, and he was in communication with them. I still have no idea who these individuals might be. However, I theorize they may be false profiles from the other online people he is close with in his internet videos. I also would not be surprised to find fake screenshots of social media private messages where they copied my profile picture and such. I have never told anyone not to return before this toxic player. One of my biggest concerns was being doxxed to be harassed. This is a big issue with online streaming and video sites and hateful content creators who want to rally people to anger, violence, and vandalism. Interestingly, at one point during this week of events, I received a Facebook private message from someone locally that I had never met that made a joke of sorts. It sounded like a threat with a car. I asked what was going on and got no response, which leads me to believe he did dox me in some group. I recorded the video, then distributed the link to the original video to the players present that day of the disastrous game. While some players wanted to keep their distance and not get involved, which is totally fine, a number of others confirmed his claims were completely false, or that they didn't hear anything that would support his claims. I even got private messages of support from players that were just in the group and I had never met, or didn't even play that day, which felt amazing. To see people rally to support me, even in private, based solely on my past reputation and actions, was an amazing feeling I cannot begin to express in words. The video was a smoking gun. The player feedback was the proof. From there, I had a great conversation with the volunteer group head person. I was given some advice and explained the truth of the events, even sending the video to show the absurdity. We hung up on good terms. When screenshotting the series of events, I went to go get the communications between myself and the toxic player that led to me telling him he is not welcome in one of my games. They were gone. I went looking for other comments made by the toxic player. All gone. I looked in the admin log, and no one had deleted them. As I continued my search, I found a comment by the player that was still in a comment thread. The toxic player was deleting comments the night before the permanent ban, forgetting or missing this one, a complete admission of guilt. I did previously copy and paste the whole series of comments into Microsoft Word, but it's not a screenshot, so people might have different opinions on it. Then, by week's end, I noticed the mod from one of the pages who banned me without evidence and in spite of evidence supporting me joined our local group page. I made sure to warn the other admin that I was unsure of this mod's intentions. Next thing I know, my admin status is revoked. Then a large conversation ensues where I am requesting to have it returned, given the truth of the situation and the mountain of evidence. The other admin confirmed he talked to the other players, and that they confirmed it looked like the toxic player was dishonest. Later on, it was even confirmed that the situation was good financially for the toxic player. The toxic player was gloating how the situation at my expense was gaining him income. However, time went by with some additional limited conversation, and the other admin took control of the group, only allowing me moderator status. I want to take a moment to clarify this detail, because it can be spun in a negative light. The group itself was originally created on Facebook by the other admin. However, I was added and appointed admin that day. Nearly exclusively, for years, I ran the group. He would participate, but nowhere near to the quantity I did. Personally, not fond of gloating, I will state here I am extremely proud of my efforts to grow the group over the years and will take this moment to own those efforts. At the time of these events, we had known each other for nearly a decade. Similar backgrounds, both Battletech fanatics. We got along great. This really felt like a stab in the back and a near complete loss of trust, and for him to revoke my status on behalf of the toxic player and the toxic mod acting on the toxic player's behalf. It was obvious that by only allowing moderator status, there was a desired element of control or pressure on me. This was unacceptable to me as my trust had been completely violated. I never expressed this next portion to the other admin, as he may have believed what he was doing was right in some capacity, but the night before he revoked my status, I was on the admin page. I was looking at the admin names and considered heavily, probably for the majority of an hour, if I should preemptively revoke his admin status. In the end, I told myself that we had been friends for years, and I trusted him, and closed the page out without taking any action. A handful of other conversations and emails happened in the following weeks. I told the admin that I wanted an apology to me, an apology on the toxic player's channel, and an apology email to the volunteer group, to which the admin was very certain would not happen. Finally, I began expressing that I would file a restraining order if continued harassment occurred. I actually filled out the docs with screenshots and evidence and the self-incriminating video ready to go. I had everything ready to meet with the judge. In the end, I returned to running games after a small break. Things settled down, and I began noticing that the toxic player wasn't around anymore, even in other groups. I cleared my name with the volunteer group by sending some of the evidence their way, with the understanding it was not to be distributed. Turns out, the toxic player had been thrown out by near everyone locally for nearly the same type of attitude and activity. Believe me, I had a hearty belly laugh on that news, which was a good night in that parking lot. I wound up letting the restraining order docs expire and worked to move on. This was a series of weeks that provided some of the most intense stress I had dealt with in a long time. Not the worst thing, but still enough to shake me a bit. Unfortunately, the GM of the game that the toxic player used to set these events in motion has stopped playing. He was appalled at the way this blew up and the way I was targeted. We played some more games from time to time, but he hasn't played with the group in a few months. I won't even return to the other pages I was banned from initially and then left, because if that is the character of the mods there, I want no part of it. A couple of players present the day of the game that went wrong have not returned either, but are always welcome to. To restate, I have not received an apology from anyone who acted against me. Moving on from the old page, I started a new group Facebook page and Discord, which are once again thriving. We have players running games on different days in both Battletech and Alpha Strike. Within our group, I found a new respect for a number of players that stood by me and will always cherish their friendship. Another store welcomed me with open arms, and I began running a bunch of games there, even all-day games. Amazing people came out of this into my life. This series of events easily can transition into the current gaming atmosphere and culture, specifically gatekeeping. Gatekeeping is a necessary tool to keep the toxicity out. There are extremes where some people will abuse such a role, and some players hate that such a role exists. However, there is a middle ground concept where you can welcome someone in the door, then when they shit on the entryway carpet, you throw them right out. Still have to deal with the shit and their shit fit on the way out, but in the end your house will remain clean. Remember to let toxic players expose themselves. Do not swear at them, do not blame them, do not act offensively at them. Bide your time. They will cross the line sooner or later if you continue to deny them the submission they want from you. When they do, immediately take screenshots. I would say a big mistake was not having screenshots of the comments the toxic player deleted. Another concern to watch out for in the modern gaming space is the identity ideology being used as a weapon. It has been used in a great many arenas, even in the wider Battletech communities before. Elon Musk's quote runs true as ever. As seen in this series of events, people will act on the claim of misgendering, without evidence, and even ignore evidence showing it never happened. There are various details that have been left out to preserve identities, although I am sure a handful will be able to figure out some of the info. The toxic player was not quiet during his tirade to harass, slander, cyberbully, and commit libel against me. There are also some left out details that could better show the obvious, in hindsight, chain of events and intended goals of the toxic player that would further risk giving away identities. It is a simple chain of events. Participate in something, amplify frustration in something that went wrong, rally people against the player, then when the player stands up for themselves, play victim, and rally more people against the player. That I have self-incriminating video evidence of the false claims made by the toxic player, followed by the statements of the players present proving the claims false, followed further by the toxic player deleting his own comments, shows undeniably the toxic player's intended goal was to drive me out of our local community. Why me? I have no idea. I don't know the toxic player outside of these interactions. It was quite freeing to put this together, almost if, as I typed the sequence of events, any remaining stress of it flowed from my fingers and away from me. Myself and others think this is a good event to put out there, so players can see real events that take place within gaming communities. Please, take this as encouragement to stand up for yourself. Someone leveraging their identity as a weapon or tool is the worst type of person. They harm the reputation of their own community, harm the reputation of the person they are attacking, and cause massive issues within communities. Battletech is for everyone, except those who would wrong the fans of Battletech. Thank you.